The Reclamation of Brooke. Hello everyone. If you've ever been underestimated, this is the story for you. A story of betrayal, revenge, and the power to reclaim your own destiny. Hit like, subscribe, and get ready for a night that will change everything. Let's begin. The velvet box closed with a click that resonated like the slamming door on a life they had built. Brooke Sterling stared at it, perched on the cold marble of her kitchen island, her hand instinctively cradling the gentle curve of her 6-month pregnancy. Inside that box was the diamond necklace Ethan Finch had promised she would wear to the Gala of the Stars, the social event of the year. But the necklace, like the promise, was no longer for her. His words, short and devoid of warmth, still hung in the air between them, more chilling than the sterile, minimalist design of their penthouse. "You're just not ready for an event, Brooke. It's for the best." She had been replaced, his pregnant wife, for the sake of appearances. But he could never have imagined who would be holding her hand when she walked through those ballroom doors that very night. The silence on the 52nd floor of the Nexus Tower was a living entity. It breathed the scent of expensive leather and glass cleaner, and it exhaled a deep, soul-shattering emptiness. Only minutes ago, it had been filled with Ethan's soft, justifying voice, each word a carefully polished stone thrown at Brooke's heart. Her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman she barely recognized. It wasn't just the pregnancy that had softened her angles and given a new, vulnerable curve to her body. It was the look in her eyes, a tired, hurt disbelief. She and Ethan had been a team. She was the quiet architect, whose vision for structure and foundation had helped him see the groundwork for a business, while he was the charismatic face of Finch & Day Realty, the man who could sell a dream with a handshake and a dazzling smile. She had set aside her own promising career to support his meteoric rise, a sacrifice she made willingly for the future they were building for the child she now carried. "It's a business necessity, Brooke," he had told her, adjusting the cuffs on his $1,000 shirt. "We need to project a certain image, power, unencumbered energy. Robert Day will be there. We're about to hit the big leagues. Unencumbered." The word had caught in her throat, tasting like poison. "Is that what our baby is, Ethan? An encumbrance?" He had finally turned, his face a mask of practiced patience, the kind a parent uses with a difficult child. "Don't be dramatic. This is for one night. You're tired all the time. Your ankles are swollen. It's better for you to rest. Better for the situation," she whispered to the empty room now. "Not for our baby. Not for our son. The situation." The final brutal blow was the name that slipped from his lips. He would be taking Chloe Bell. Chloe was a young associate at his firm, a woman of sharp angles, even sharper ambition, and a smile that never quite reached her cold, calculating eyes. Brooke had seen the way Chloe looked at Ethan at the last company party, not with admiration, but with the predatory gaze of a shark that had smelled blood. She sank to the warm tiles, letting the sobs out, deep, ragged sounds of a world coming apart. It wasn't just the humiliation of the dance. It was the casual cruelty, the dismissal of her as a person, as his wife, as the mother of his child. She was a line item in his life that had become inconvenient, a variable in his equation for success that needed to be temporarily eliminated. She cried for the woman she had been, the bright, hopeful girl who had fallen in love with a charming, ambitious man. The hours bled together. The sun, a burning orange ball, began its descent over the city, painting the sky with shades of hurt and sadness. Brooke rose. Her face was stained, her eyes red. She looked at her reflection again, but this time, something else glinted behind the pain. It was anger, a cold, clear, diamond-hard fury that began to crystallize in the ruins of her heart. He thought she was weak, a hindrance, a tired, swollen woman to be hidden away, while he and his mistress paraded, securing his future. He had underestimated her. He had forgotten who she was before she became Mrs. Ethan Finch. He had forgotten the woman who could command a boardroom with a quiet presentation, the woman who could spot the fatal flaw in a building's design from a single blueprint, the woman who had tenacity woven into her very soul. She walked back into the living room, her steps now firm. Her gaze fell on her laptop. A wild, bold idea ignited in her mind. It was a risky gambit, a desperate long shot armed with nothing but a memory and a sliver of professional pride. Years ago, before she set her career aside, Brooke had run a small but innovative nonprofit called Urbanitas, focused on creating sustainable community green spaces in neglected city areas. They were brilliant, but broke. In one last desperate attempt, she had secured a meeting with the Knight Foundation, the philanthropic giant founded by the legendary and legendarily reclusive tech billionaire, Dominic Knight. She hadn't met the man in person. The meeting was with his board. But as she was packing up her presentation, a low, quiet voice had spoken from the doorway. It was him, Dominic Knight. "Your vision is 20 years ahead of its time, Ms. Sterling," he had said, his voice resonating with a quiet power. "The board is too conservative. They'll fund another hospital wing. It's safer." He handed her his private business card. It was a thick, black card, with just a name and a number. "The world will catch up to you eventually. When it does, or when you need a partner who understands that a foundation is meant to build the future, not just patch up the present. Call this number. No assistants, no gatekeepers. Just me." She had kept the card, a memento of a dream that had almost been. She had never dared to use it. Until now. Her hands trembled as she pulled the card from a keepsake box in her old desk drawer. The number stood out against the black. This was insane. Calling one of the richest men in the world on the night of a gala he was sponsoring, a gala her husband was attending with his mistress. What would she even say? She looked at her belly, and her son gave a gentle kick, as if to encourage her. This was no longer just about her pride. This was about his future. A future with a mother who didn't fall apart, who didn't hide. A mother who fought. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. She was about to hang up, her courage failing, when the line connected. "Knight." The voice was exactly as she remembered. Quiet, direct, authoritative. "Mr. Knight," she began, her voice barely a whisper. She cleared her throat. "My name is Brooke Sterling. We spoke once, several years ago, about your project, Urbanitas." There was a pause. For a terrifying second, she thought he wouldn't remember her, that she would be dismissed as just another nuisance call. "I remember it, Ms. Sterling," he said, and she could have wept with relief. "Socially conscious, sustainable architecture. You wanted to build a park on top of a derelict warehouse downtown. I told you the board was stupid." The tears sprang to her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. "Yes, that was me. Your call is timely. I was just going over the guest list for this ridiculous Gala of the Stars I am forced to attend tonight. Your husband, Ethan Finch, is on the list. I presume you are calling to say you'll be accompanying him." The dam broke. The words came gushing out. Not a polished speech, but a raw, honest confession of her situation. She told him about her husband's cruelty, about Chloe Bell, about being cast aside because her pregnancy was an inconvenience to his ambition. She didn't ask for pity. She framed it as a business proposal born of desperation. "Mr. Knight, My life has just been fundamentally restructured. I need to secure a future for my son, and I can't do it by hiding. I need to relaunch my work. The Gala of the Stars is for the hope of children. The most influential people in the city will be there. I need to be there, too. Not as a victim, but as the founder of the Sterling Initiative. I need a backer, not for the night, but for a new beginning. I know this is a crazy, unprofessional request, but you told me to call when I needed a partner to build the future. Well, my future just started today. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on, and Brooke held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had laid bare her entire broken soul. Finally, Dominic Knight spoke again. His voice had lost its dispassionate edge, replaced by something more. A note of steel. "Ms. Sterling," he said slowly, "I despise bullies, and I loathe men who mistake kindness for weakness. Your husband is making a grave error tonight, but his mistake will be your opportunity." He paused. "I am the main sponsor of tonight's event. It is terribly boring, and I was planning to make a token appearance and leave, but you have just given me a reason to stay. You don't need a backer for the night, Brooke. You need an ally, a partner. Be ready in 90 minutes. My car will be downstairs." Brooke was stunned, speechless. "And Brooke," Dominic added, his voice low and firm, "wear something that makes you feel powerful. Tonight we're not just attending a dance, we're making a statement." The line went dead. Brooke stared at her phone, her mind reeling. The despair that had paralyzed her just an hour ago was gone, replaced by a terrifying and exhilarating rush of adrenaline. She wasn't just going to the dance, she was going to war. The triumphant entrance, 90 minutes. It was an impossible deadline that paradoxically made everything possible. There was no time for doubt, no room for fear. There was only action. Brooke's first course of action was to walk into her and Ethan's walk-in closet. Her gaze fell on a garment bag, in the back, a purchase from a year ago she had never quite dared to wear. It was a gown from a designer known for dressing royalty and industry titans, a silk dress of a deep emerald green that shimmered like a forest pond at midnight. It was not a maternity dress, but its empire waist design and flowing A-line skirt could work. She slipped it on. The silk was cool against her feverish skin. It fit. Not perfectly, but beautifully. The high waist settled just above her belly, falling in a cascade of fabric that made her look not hidden or swollen, but majestic, ethereal. It was the armor she needed. Next, her jewelry box. She pushed aside the pretty, delicate things Ethan had bought her. Her hand closed around a piece her grandmother had left her, a stunning platinum and onyx Art Deco necklace. It was bold, almost severe, a statement of strength and heritage. It settled perfectly against her collarbones, a striking, beautiful contrast to the soft green of the dress. As she got ready, her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "A team is en route to your service entrance. They are from me. Let them in, DK." Minutes later, her doorbell rang. Outside were a man and a woman, both dressed in discreet black. They radiated a quiet, formidable competence. "Ms. Sterling," the woman said, introducing herself as Lena, with a small, respectful nod. "Mr. Knight sent us. I'm here for hair and makeup. My colleague, George, is here for security and to ensure your smooth departure." Brooke was dumbfounded. This was a level of operational efficiency she had only ever read about. Lena worked with a speed and precision that were mesmerizing. "We're not going to hide the pregnancy," Lena declared, more like a commander giving an order than a stylist making a suggestion. "We're going to celebrate it. The glow is your greatest asset. We'll highlight it. Power and serenity." As Lena put the finishing touches on her, Brooke looked at herself in the mirror. The broken, tear-stained woman from hours ago was gone. In her place, a queen. She looked powerful. Yes, but more than that. She looked serene. She looked like a woman who knew her own worth. A woman who was on the precipice of her own life, not falling off the edge of someone else's. Meanwhile, George, the silent security man, had made a discreet sweep of the apartment. He spoke into a discreet comms device on his wrist. "Asset secured. Preparing for extraction in 10. Have the vehicle ready at the South Service exit. No press." What do you think of Brooke's preparation? Do you believe a simple change of clothes can change everything? Leave your opinion in the comments. Just as Lena was packing up her kit, Brooke's phone vibrated again. It was Ethan. A text with a photo. It was him and Chloe posing in front of a mirror. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, a smug, triumphant look on his face. Chloe was draped on his arm in a shimmering, form-fitting silver dress. The diamond necklace, her necklace, was around Chloe's neck. The caption read, "Wish you were here, having a great time." The cruelty was so blatant, so juvenile, it was almost laughable. A month ago, it would have shattered her. An hour ago, it would have made her feel sick. Now, looking at her reflection in the mirror, she felt a strange sense of pity for him. He was a boy playing king, completely unaware that a real power was about to enter the game. She didn't reply. She simply deleted the message. "It's time, Ms. Sterling," George said from the doorway. Lena gave her one last look. "You look magnificent," she said. And for the first time, a genuine smile touched her lips. "Go get what's yours." Brooke walked out of the apartment she had shared with Ethan. Without a single look back, George led her down a service elevator, bypassing the grand lobby. When the doors opened into a private underground garage, a sleek black Bentley, the kind that whispers wealth rather than shouts it, was purring quietly. The driver, also in a discreet suit, opened the door for her. The car's interior was a cocoon of silent luxury. As they pulled out into the city traffic, Brooke finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline was still running through her veins, but now it was tempered with a steely determination. The car did not head directly for the Palace Hotel, where the gala was being held. Instead, it pulled up to a discreet, ivy-covered brownstone in the West Village. "Mr. Knight will meet you here," George said. "He prefers to avoid the tumult of the main entrance." The door to the brownstone opened before she reached it, revealing Dominic Knight. He was taller than she remembered, dressed in a classic, exquisitely cut tuxedo. He was not handsome in the conventional, polished way Ethan was. His was a face carved by intelligence and experience, his salt and pepper hair adding to his air of authority. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue, assessed her in a single instant. He took in the dress, the necklace, and the determination in her jaw. A slow smile of approval spread across his face. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice a low murmur of satisfaction. "Brooke, you look like a woman who can build empires." "That's my intention," she replied. Her voice steady. "Good," he said, and he offered her his arm. "Because we are about to lay the first brick." He led her inside, not to a drawing room, but to a high-tech office. A massive screen on the wall showed a live feed of the gala's entrance. The red carpet was a frenzy of cameras and journalists. "Standard reconnaissance," Dominic explained, gesturing to the screen. "Know the lay of the land before you step onto the field." He pointed to a figure on the screen. "There, that's Robert Day, your husband's boss, a man who respects only two things, money and power." He was giving her a battlefield briefing. He wasn't treating her like a spurned wife who needed a white knight. He was treating her like a general, and he was her strategist. They watched for a few moments as Ethan and Chloe made their grand entrance. The cameras swarmed them. Ethan was in his element, preening, soaking up the attention. Chloe, for her part, played the adoring partner to perfection. "He's strutting," Dominic observed, a note of disdain in his voice. "He thinks this is his moment of triumph. He has no idea it's merely the opening act." He turned away from the screen to face her. His expression was serious. "Now, for our terms of engagement. Tonight, you are not my date. You are my business partner. We are here to announce the relaunch of your vision, backed by the full weight of the Knight Foundation. I am not rescuing you, Brooke. I am investing in you. The revenge is merely a fortuitous byproduct." He took a sleek black portfolio from his desk and handed it to her. "A preliminary proposal for the Sterling Initiative. I had my team draft it this last hour. It outlines an initial $5 million in funding to begin the feasibility studies on 3 of your original Urbanitas projects. It's real. It's effective immediately." Brooke opened the portfolio. Her hands trembled as she read the words. It was her dream, not just revisited, but magnified, empowered. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he said doftly. "Just succeed. That will be thanks enough." He looked at his watch. "Cocktail hour has just started. The key players are all inside. Shall we?" He offered her his arm again. This time, when she took it, it felt different. It was no longer the arm of a rescuer. It was the arm of a partner, an ally. As they walked toward the door, Brooke felt the last remnants of the victim fall away. She was no longer Ethan Finch's discarded wife. She was Brooke Sterling, founder of the Sterling Initiative, and she was about to make her entrance. The legacy, the ballroom of the Palace Hotel, was a testament to obscene wealth. Chandeliers dripping with fist-sized crystals hung from a gilded ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow over the city's elite. The air buzzed with the murmur of 1,000 conversations, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the distant strains of a string quartet. This was Ethan Finch's natural habitat. And for the first hour, it was. With Chloe Bell on his arm, a glittering accessory that validated his sense of virility and power, Ethan moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of a master salesman. He shook hands with bankers, laughed with tech entrepreneurs, and shared a conspiratorial whisper with a city councilman. Chloe, for her part, played the adoring partner to perfection. "Ethan, darlin', Robert Day is lookin'," Chloe purred. "He's with the senator. This is your chance." Ethan's heart gave a little flutter of ambition. Day was the kingmaker of Finch and Day, a man whose approval he craved with a desperate hunger. He adjusted his bow tie, put on his most confident smile, and steered Chloe toward them. "Robert, Senator," Ethan boomed, extending a hand. "A magnificent night for a worthy cause." Robert Day, a man with eyes like granite chips, gave him a curt nod. "Finch, good of you to come. And this is—" His gaze fell on Chloe, appraising and dismissive. "Chloe Bell," Ethan said smoothly. "One of our brightest rising stars at the firm." "I see," Day said, his tone suggesting he saw a great deal. But before the awkward silence could turn sour, a sudden quiet fell over the section of the ballroom closest to the grand entrance. The murmur of conversation faltered. Heads began to turn one by one, like dominoes falling in a line. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. Every phone that had been discreetly tucked away was suddenly lifted, cameras pointing toward the door. Ethan, annoyed by the interruption, turned to see what the commotion was about, and then his world stopped. Framed in the magnificent entrance, bathed in the light from the chandeliers, was Brooke. His Brooke. But she was not the Brooke he had left weeping in their penthouse. This was not the tired, comfortable woman he had deemed unready for an event. This was a goddess. The emerald green of her gown was a swath of vibrant life in a sea of black tuxedos and shimmering but safe dresses. The onyx at her throat was a declaration of war. Her pregnancy was not a flaw to be hidden, but a source of radiant power, making her appear formidable and divine. She was breathtaking, and she was on the arm of Dominic Knight. Brooke's hand was held firmly by his. It was a gesture of deep intimacy and partnership that said far more than a simple public appearance. Dominic Knight, the billionaire ghost, the man who never attended these events for more than a fleeting moment, was standing there looking at Brooke with an expression of deep, undisguised admiration. Ethan's smile froze on his face, a rictus of horror. The blood drained from his head. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. How in the hell did she know Dominic Knight? Chloe's grip on his arm tightened, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his bicep. "Ethan, what the hell is that?" she hissed, her voice tight with panic. "That's your wife!" Robert Day's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He looked from Ethan's face to the radiant vision in the doorway and back again. The contempt that had been simmering just beneath the surface of his expression now bloomed into full-blown disdain. "Finch," he said, his voice dangerously low, "you have some explaining to do." But Ethan couldn't speak. He could only watch as Dominic Knight guided Brooke toward the center of the room. The crowd parted for them as if they were royalty. The people Ethan had been so desperate to impress were now tripping over themselves to get Dominic's attention, their glances darting from the billionaire to the stunning woman at his side. The string quartet seemed to falter. The photographers, who had been content to take photos of B-list celebrities and social climbers, now swarmed the entrance, their flashes creating a wall of blinding light. Dominic guided Brooke to the center of the room. He paused to greet the senator, completely ignoring Ethan and Robert Day, who stood frozen just a few feet away. "Senator," Dominic said, his voice easily audible in the now quieter room. "A pleasure. I want to introduce you to my new partner. This is Ms. Brooke Sterling, the founder of the soon-to-be relaunched Sterling Initiative." He used her maiden name. The cut was so deep, so precise, that Ethan felt it like a physical blow. The senator, a man Ethan had been trying to get a meeting with for 6 months, beamed at Brooke. "Ms. Sterling, it's an absolute honor. Dominic has talked about nothing else for the last week. He says your vision for sustainable urban development is revolutionary. We have to talk." Ethan's mind fractured. Talked about nothing else for the last week. This wasn't a last-minute deal. This was a plan. A coordinated, strategic demolition of his entire world. He finally found his voice, a choked, pathetic sound. "Brooke," she turned to him. Her eyes, luminous and powerful, met his. There was no hatred in them, no anger, only a quiet, cool pity that was infinitely more devastating. She looked at him as if he were a stranger, a minor obstacle she had already mentally cleared from her path. "Ethan," she said, her voice even. "I don't believe you've been introduced to my business partner, Mr. Dominic Knight." Dominic looked at Ethan, and for the first time, Ethan Keats understood the difference between being rich and being powerful. Ethan's wealth was an act. Dominic's power was a fundamental state of being. Knight's blue eyes were like ice. "Mr. Finch," Dominic said, his voice a silent blade. "I believe you know Ms. Sterling." He looked at Chloe, his eyes taking in the diamond necklace. "A lovely piece. I trust the original owner won't be wanting it back." Chloe turned a deep mottled red, her hand flying instinctively to her throat. In that one phrase, Dominic Knight had branded her a thief in front of the most influential people in the city. Her social capital, so carefully curated, had just been incinerated. Before Ethan could stammer a response, The gala's host walked up to the main microphone on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, it's time for our main event, the star auction." A wave of relief washed over Ethan. The auction. This was his chance to recover. He planned to bid on the top item, the naming rights for a new pediatric wing at the city hospital. A splashy, 7-figure donation would put him back in the spotlight, show his power, and erase this humiliation. The bidding began. It quickly climbed to 500,000. Then 1 million. Finally, it was down to 2 bidders, Ethan and a rival real estate developer. The room watched in fascination. "1.5 million, Ethan called out, his voice strained, desperate to reclaim his territory. His rival hesitated, and then shook his head, conceding. A smattering of applause broke out. Ethan felt a sliver of his bravado return. He looked at Robert Day, expecting to see a glint of restored respect. Day was watching, but his face was unreadable. 1.5 million going once, the auctioneer called out. Going twice. 5 million, a quiet voice said from the center of the room. A collective gasp went through the ballroom. All heads turned to Dominic Knight. He hadn't even raised his hand. He had simply spoken. The auctioneer was flustered. "I have $5 million from Mr. Dominic Knight." Ethan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He couldn't compete with that. He was finished. But Dominic wasn't done. He raised a hand for silence. "And," he announced, his voice resonating with authority, "the Knight Foundation will, of course, be funding the new pediatric wing. But my $5 million bid tonight is for something else. It is the seed capital to launch a vital new venture that I am proud to be partnering with. An initiative that embodies the spirit of tonight's gala, investing in a better future for our children." He turned and smiled at Brooke, a smile of genuine pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, this donation officially launches the Sterling Initiative under the brilliant leadership of its founder, Brooke Sterling." What would you do if you found yourself in Ethan's situation? Do you think public humiliation is a fair punishment for his betrayal? The room erupted in applause that was louder and more genuine than any before. It wasn't just applause for a generous donation. It was the sound of a new star being born. Robert Day was clapping, a slow, calculating smile now on his face as he looked at Brooke with a new respect. The senator was patting her on the shoulder. The city's power players were surrounding her, congratulating her, wanting a piece of her. She was the center of the universe, and Ethan Finch was a ghost standing at the edge of the void, watching the life he had discarded be crowned. Chloe had already vanished from his side, slinking away into the crowd like the specter she was. He was completely and devastatingly alone. Brooke met his eyes one last time across the crowded room. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a gesture of triumph or malice. It was a gesture of farewell, a final goodbye. Then she turned back to her new life, her hand held firmly by Dominic Knight, her face lit by the bright, blinding light of her own future. The fallout from the Gala of the Stars was not a slow burn. It was a detonation. By the time the last of the champagne had been drunk and the limos had whisked away the city's elite, Ethan Finch's social and professional life lay in smoking ruins. The story was too delicious, too perfectly archetypal for the ecosystem of high society to ignore. He walked out of the dance alone, a ghost shuffling through the leftovers of a party that only hours before had felt like his coronation. The next morning, his fears were realized in spectacular fashion. The city's most influential and feared society blogger, Peyton Page, published her recap of the gala. Her column, The Page Verdict, was required reading for anyone who was anyone, and she had taken to her subject with the vicious relish of a master butcher. The headline was a masterpiece of gloating. Knight's new lady, billionaire Back's spurned wife, in power play for the ages. Ethan read the text on his tablet, the coffee he had just brewed turning to acid in his stomach. Ethan, in a desperate attempt to reclaim a shred of his dignity, engaged in a bidding war for the naming rights to a hospital wing. It was a pathetic spectacle, like a poodle yapping at a lion. And then the lion roared. Dominic Knight, with 2 words and a $5 million bid, not only won the auction, but publicly reassigned Mr. Finch's wife's destiny, anointing her as the head of a new Knight-backed initiative. Rarely has such a complete and utter public vivisection been witnessed. By the end of the night, Mr. Finch was left with nothing but a cancelled check and the ghost of a career. His phone rang, shrill and demanding. It was Robert Day's assistant. "Mr. Day wants to see you in his office. Now." The tone was arctic, promising an execution. When he entered the top-floor office, the view of the city was obscured by the drawn blinds. Day stood by the window, his back to the door. "I built my reputation, and this firm's reputation, on 2 principles, Finch," Day began, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Strength and foresight. I expect my senior partners to embody those same principles, to project them, to live them." He finally turned, and his face was a mask of cold fury. "Last night you showed neither. You showed a catastrophic weakness by allowing your messy personal life to explode in the most public forum imaginable, making yourself, and by extension, this firm, a laughingstock." He slapped a copy of the Financial Chronicle onto his desk. "But that is not your greatest sin," Day continued, his voice dropping even lower. "Your greatest sin was a complete, unforgivable, and ruinous lack of foresight. Dominic Knight doesn't make investments. He builds kingdoms. He alters landscapes. And you fool, you handed him a queen. You had a direct, intimate line to a woman he clearly values, a woman with vision, a woman who is now his strategic partner, and you were too blind, too arrogant, too stupid to see her value. You not only failed to recognize a valuable asset, you actively discarded it. You made us look like we couldn't recognize value when it's sleeping in our own bed." The firing was swift and merciless. He was to clear his desk by noon. There was no negotiation, no severance. He was a liability, an infected limb being amputated before the gangrene could spread. For Brooke, the days following the gala were a whirlwind of a different kind. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, but the calls were from architects she had long admired, urban planners, journalists from national publications, and even an old professor from college. "I always knew you had it, Brooke," he had said, his voice brimming with pride. "You just needed the right foundation." She realized with stunning clarity that her value had always been there. It had just been dormant, overshadowed by Ethan's blinding ambition. True to his word, Dominic was a partner, not a savior. He arranged a meeting 2 days after the gala, not in a boardroom, but in a bright, spacious loft in the Soho neighborhood, with exposed brick walls and massive windows. "A temporary headquarters," he said, gesturing to the empty space. "Think of it as a blank canvas. Your canvas." Brooke walked the loft, a hand resting on her stomach. She could feel the potential of the space, the light, the energy. It felt like her future. "It's perfect," she sighed. "This is your vision, Brooke," he told her, his tone serious as they stood looking out at the streets below. "My foundation will provide you with the resources, the legal team, the financial advisors, the PR infrastructure. They are tools for you to use. I am not your boss. I am your ally, your first investor. Your success is the only return I'm interested in." His respect was a balm on the wound of Ethan's contempt. He saw her mind, her talent, her resilience, and he valued it. A week after the gala, a legal messenger arrived at the penthouse while Ethan was in the middle of the humiliating task of packing his suits and trinkets into cardboard boxes. The messenger handed him a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers. They had been filed on the grounds of infidelity and irreconcilable differences, the language cold and efficient. Brooke was not asking for the penthouse or punitive compensation. The documents outlined a simple, clean break. She was reclaiming her maiden name, taking only her personal effects and a small inheritance from her grandmother. She was also requesting a fair and structured child support agreement to be put into a trust for their son, managed by a neutral third party. There was no angry letter, no final dramatic confrontation, just the cold, clean paperwork of a life that was being surgically removed from his. He slumped against a stack of boxes, the papers trembling in his hand. The lack of emotion was the most damning indictment of all. It told him he was no longer even worth her anger. He was simply a chapter she had finished reading and was now closing forever. At its core, this was not just a story of revenge. It was a story of reclamation. Brooke Sterling didn't just get even. She got it all. She reclaimed her name, her career, her strength, and her future, transforming a moment of profound betrayal into the foundation for a life of purpose. It is a powerful reminder that our lowest moments do not have to define us. Sometimes, the demolition of the life we thought we wanted is the necessary first step to building the one we were always meant to have. True power is not about the applause you receive in a crowded room, but the quiet, unshakable worth you build inside yourself. If Brooke's journey from disillusionment to triumph has resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of resilience to turn injustice on its head, show your support by hitting like. Share this story with someone who might need a reminder of their own inner strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of karma, justice, and empowerment. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of inspiration. Thanks for listening.